Vaibhav Negi. What do you think about Tony Ferguson as a fighter? Would you consider him the greatest of all time if he beats Khabib? What do I think about him as a fighter? Well, first, the second question I'll answer first. Is he the greatest of all time in MMA? No, absolutely not. Is he the greatest lightweight of all time? 100%. The winner of Khabib and Tony, I believe, is the greatest lightweight of all time. Yes, there are title defense records and all that sort of stuff, but you gotta remember who set those records. Or BJ Penn set the record, right? I think it's 3. Let me actually check really quick just to fact check that, because it'll make a little bit of a difference. Okay, BJ Penn defended the belt 3 times. The defense record. But look who he fought. Let's be honest here. He won the belt against Joe Stevenson. He defended against Sean Sherk. Sean Sherk wasn't bad for those days. He defended against Kenny Florian and defended against Diego Sanchez. Okay, that competition doesn't even touch the feet of what Tony Ferguson has beaten, right? Even Khabib is being better, way better competition. So how much does the title defense record really mean? And you gotta also think about the lightweight division just started back then, right? How many fights did BJ Penn have in lightweight before he fought for the title? Well, if you count all of his wins prior to getting a title shot, it's 6, but he left the UFC for quite a while, for almost 4 years, came back and had 1 win against Chen Spalver, fought for the title against Joe Stevenson, beat Joe Stevenson, beat Sean Sherk in his title defense, which is a solid win, lost to GSP, which was at welterweight, then went back to lightweight and beat Florian and Sanchez, and then never won a lightweight fight after that. And if you look at his fights prior, early in the UFC, against D. Thomas, that's a pretty good win. Matt Serra, that's a decent win. Other than that, there's no real giant name on his record that he has beaten in the lightweight division. The amount of wins he has in the UFC at lightweight is less than what Tony and Khabib have in a row. That's kind of crazy. They have an 11 win streak, Khabib and Tony. Penn only has 10 wins in the UFC at lightweight overall, right? And look at the competition. It's not even in the same ballpark. It's not even in the same continent. So yes, Tony and Khabib, I believe the winner of those two is undoubtedly, it's set in concrete, the greatest lightweight of all time. You could point to Frank Yeager, you could point to Benson Henderson. I don't think them either. I mean, they haven't beaten that kind of competition as well. Benson Henderson has beaten some good guys, but let me even look at his record. Okay, he beat Donald Cerrone twice in WEC. He beat Clay Guida back in the day when Guida was actually a top-ranked guy. He beat Frankie twice. Those are his best wins. He beat Frankie twice. One of them was extremely close, and the other one was just a solid win, I guess. Once he upkicked Frankie, that fight was pretty much in his favor. He beat Nate. I think Nate's better now than he ever has been. He beat Gilbert Melendez, which is a solid win, but it was extremely close as well. A lot of people thought Melendez won that fight. Then he lost to Pettis again. His second loss, and it was to Pettis in the lightweight division. Then he barely beats Josh Thompson. Then he submits Rustam Khabilov, loses to RDA, loses to Cerrone, goes to Bellator, beats Pitbull in a very freakish fight, loses to Chandler, loses to Pitbull, beats Huerta, and then beats Awad. Yes, the Frankie wins are good. Gilbert Melendez win is good. Early down Cerrone wins are decent. I mean, we're talking about very young Cerrone. Clay Guida win was pretty good. Now let's look at Tony. Tony only has 1 loss in the lightweight division, ever. That's the Michael Johnson back in 2012 where he broke his arm. He broke his arm in the fight. That's a big factor into that. So the guys he's beaten. He beat a prime Trujillo. He beat a prime Tebow. Okay, he submitted those guys. They're not the greatest wins, but that's like very similar to beating a guy like Clay Guida in Benson Henderson's career. He beat Josh Thompson way more convincingly than Benson Henderson did. He beat Barboza, submitted him, did whatever he wanted to RDA. That's his biggest win by far. Submitted Kevin Lee, and then beat Anthony Pettis, who Benson Henderson lost to twice. And he also lost to RDA. Tony Ferguson might have the best resume, at least competition-wise, in the lightweight division. And if he adds Khabib to that, no, there's no debate. There's absolutely no debate to that. Let's say with Khabib. If Khabib beats Tony, there is no debate. He's the greatest lightweight of all time. So this whole title fight stuff, title defense record, all that, there's an asterisk to it. Look at who they fought, look at who they beat, look at how they beat them, look at their win streak. That's what you should be looking at. Now, what do I think about him as a fighter? One of my favorite fighters to watch. He's a cringe guy personality-wise. I like his personality. He's cool. He's a bit weird, but, I mean, who isn't weird? He's a little bit over the top with it, but a lot of people can relate to stuff he does. And that cringe, that weird personality of his really blends into his fighting style. That's just who he is. And his training, right? His training's weird. His fighting's weird. Now, I think he is getting a little bit upset about that. When people are saying he's weird, I don't think they really mean it as like an insult. I think of it as a compliment. I think of it as he's just a very unique guy. I guess that's a better word to say. He's unique. He does a lot of things that nobody else does. He speaks in a way that nobody else does. He trains in a way nobody else does. fights. He wins in ways nobody else does. And he's on the cusp of being the greatest lightweight of all time because of this. So he's doing things right. They're different. They're not the norm, but they're right. He's an absolute savage. He's a Terminator. He has some of the best recovery I've ever seen. Once he gets clipped, he is probably the most well-rounded lightweight I've ever seen. He has everything in his arsenal. Everything is sound in a sense of it being effective. And he breaks the norm of what is supposed to be right. What do trainers usually teach you? Chin down, hands up. He is chin up, hands down. And he is winning like this. Sometimes he gets caught. Sometimes he doesn't. Depends how he uses it. He throws a jab and then puts his feet forward after. Where you taught in boxing gyms. Feet first and then jab. Feet are always first before you throw a punch. He does the opposite, and it works for him. He catches people, right? There's a surprise factor to that kind of technique. Because now what he's doing, nobody trains like that. So nobody expects it. So when he's throwing jab and then feet, fighters are thinking he has to step first and then jab. It's part of their muscle memory to see it in their opposition. But when they see the opposite, it scrambles their brain. They're like, whoa, what was that? He throws that front kick to a lead right hand. Anthony Pettis did it to him. Anthony Pettis probably saw part of Tony Ferguson's style because I've never seen Anthony Pettis ever throw that combination. Tony's the only guy I've ever seen throw that. He threw it a lot against RDA. It's a very different kind of style, and it really shows to everybody that there is no right way of fighting. What he does is reverse to everything everybody believes, and he's winning. That just tells you, and my philosophy, I've always said it, I've said it even last year when I started this channel, there is no right way to fight. Yes, you can point to ridiculous things like no-touch fighting and death blows and bull-ass like that. But there are techniques out there. If you're just going to say, no, that never works, the spinning heel kick would never work. But look, Edson Barboza used it. Front kicks will never work. Anderson Silva and Lyoto Machida beg to differ. You should always have your chin down. Yes, I recommend that happening because for the most part, it works for most fighters, for most martial artists. But some guys, it doesn't work for them. Some guys, they got to keep their chin up and back up. Khabib and Tony both do that. And both of them are the best lightweights in the world. Conor does it to an extent too. Conor will lower his chin sometimes, but he keeps his chin pretty high up constantly. He keeps his hands down too, right? And that's why I've been to gyms where they try to quote-unquote correct your form and tell you that is wrong. Whenever a coach tells you that, besides if he's showing you the basics, if he's talking about the basics, it's a little bit different. But if he tells you or she tells you a certain technique is wrong when it doesn't really look like it should be wrong completely, you could see some areas where it can work. If they tell you this certain thing is completely wrong compared to what they're teaching you, lose the coach. I've seen it too many times, man. Too many people have been taught things that are just like, you could tell it's not part of them. It's not part of their style. Like Muhammad Ali, for an example. He constantly expressed that. Things he did are not what coaches told him he should have been doing. Roy Jones Jr. didn't even know the basics that well, right? And look how successful he was. Yes, it did him in. It ruined him when he got older and his speed went away. But look at him for the first 40-something fights. The guy was unstoppable. Now, if he fought like a regular boxer, textbook, hands up, chin down, one step at a time, moving forward, start everything with a jab, maybe throw a left hook sometimes, cross, and then bring your hands back, get into stance again, and face the opponent, Roy Jones wouldn't be Roy Jones. And I'm glad a guy like Tony Ferguson is breaking the norm because that is what it's all about. You can't have everything in a set principle, right? Everything is meant to be broken. Everything is meant to be new. The game is supposed to evolve. Tony Ferguson evolves the game somewhat. The ground and pound off his back, nobody does it better than him. The techniques he uses on the feet, those Imanari rolls, who was using those before he was in MMA? Ryan Hall started using it. They were using it on the same card together. But I think Tony did it first, if I'm not mistaken. Could have been Ryan Hall, but Tony Ferguson also used it. Maybe you saw Ryan Hall use it and like, wow, I can do that. And now look who's using it. Now Rory's using it. Other people are trying it. Some guy got knocked out. I think it was Marcin Held who tried to use it and he got knocked out for it. So you got to understand the game. You got to evolve the game and then everybody has to adapt. The guy who's evolving the game, the guy who's the innovator, who's pushing martial arts to another level, that is the all-time great guy. Everybody who's just trying to adapt to what that guy's doing, they never really reach that level. Conor evolved the game, even stylistically. Look how many people start fighting like him a little bit. Look how many people start utilizing that in-and-out boxing karate style, that taekwondo style. Not a lot of people before he was. Yes, you had Lyoto Machida. Lyoto Machida also, Anderson Silva. These guys started evolving the game too. And then people started utilizing their techniques. Edson Barboza started bringing in spinning techniques. Now, spinning kicks is just normal. It's just, you should know it. That's what it is now. Nobody threw it before Barboza was. There was a time head kicks were crazy. There were head kicks that were crazy, like Mark Coleman days. Right? He got head kicked by, what's his name? Smith. I forgot his first name. I apologize. Tony Ferguson is one of those guys. And That is one reason why I love watching him fight, because there's always something new to see. There's always something new that can help every other fighter, every other young martial arts, everybody watching the sport that has these aspirations to get to this sport, to get to this level. Tony Ferguson is definitely a guy to look out for. Maybe that wouldn't work for me. Maybe that would work for me. Now I know people will start doing this. Maybe I could work against that. Maybe working on a technique that works against this technique. Tony Ferguson is a great fighter to watch if you want to learn.